Why can't you see this? Why don't you recognize that it's your thoughts that are causing the problem? In my head. Hey everybody, I do not love this orange look, but it's one of the best places that I have to talk, so it'll have to do for now. For those that don't know, who may be new to my channel, I go on walks and I talk about mental health, and I've been thinking about, well, if you guys have any topics you'd like me to cover, leave that in the comments. I can't guarantee it's something that I'm going to do, because I'm only going to talk about things that I feel comfortable talking about. But I often have a lot of different kind of ideas that run through my head, and I just kind of like pluck one of them out for what I'm going to do for the day. So tonight I want to focus on something that may be a little controversial. I don't know. I'm never afraid to shy away from controversy here, because I think diving deep into these topics and having those more deep, I don't know, what's another word for deep? Those kinds of conversations are important. And I like doing that, so I wanted to talk tonight about spirituality or religion and psychology. Well, it's a little bit breezy out tonight, but I'm happy about that because it is hotter here today. It was very hot at home. So I like the breeze, but I apologize if there's any wind noise. I try to do my best to kind of cover it up. But alright, so spirituality, religion, psychology. I should come right off the bat and say that I identify as an atheist, which means that I don't believe in God. But I'm open to some of the spiritual ideas that are out there, the religious ideas, and what I believe has nothing to do with what you believe, so we can coexist together. That's totally okay. But we're going to talk from my perspective, so that's going to color what I believe. So I think it's important personally to make a distinction between psychology, and I'm going to use spirituality when I talk about this, but you can kind of mix spirituality and religion together depending on how you want to look at things. I do realize there are differences between the two, but I'm going to lump them together just to make it easier for me to talk. I hope that's okay. If you don't think that's okay, maybe leave that in the comments below. But I think it's important to distinguish that psychology is a scientific practice. It obviously is not perfectly scientific, and we can debate that. We don't really need to here for the purpose of this video, but it is based on science, and spirituality is based on spirituality. It's based on belief. And I believe in belief. Even though I'm an atheist, I believe that beliefs matter. You know, psychology and spirituality have intertwined in many different ways. So that's kind of interesting, and maybe that's something we should discuss. There is a quote that I would like to bring up, so give me 1 second. I'm going to look it up because I always forget what the quote is, even though it's my favorite quote. And we will, I'll just throw that in the video here because I think it's important. It is only by risking our persons from one hour to another that we live at all, and often enough it is our belief beforehand in uncertified results that result comes true. Something along those lines. So that is my favorite quote, and I think it highlights the importance of belief in creating the reality that we live in. And that ties into some psychological and spiritual principles, and maybe we'll examine that next. Okay, so how does spirituality and psychology intertwine? Well, one way is through a book that was written by two psychologists, and I forget their names right now, they escape me. It's called A Course in Miracles. You may have heard of it if you're in the spiritual community, and it is a book that you know, I don't remember the story too well right now, but I believe that they were trying to write a therapy to help people, and through wanting to write that, they I don't remember if they prayed and got an answer from God or what happened, but in some way they felt like God helped them write the book, basically. I happen to actually really like A Course in Miracles. It's a systematic way of sort of like reprogramming your mind. It does reference God a lot, so you have to be open to that idea, but it's kind of a way to relieve anxiety, relieve some depression, and you know, it's not something that I believe is used to treat anything, but it's more like a manual to kind of change some of the thoughts in your life. And this is kind of one of the areas that psychology and spirituality intertwine, is with thoughts. So with your thoughts, typically when we're talking about changing thoughts through therapy, we're talking about cognitive behavioral therapy. And there's also dialectical behavior therapy. And specifically, I'm more familiar with dialectical behavior therapy, which is a sub-form of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And they focus on like meditation and wise mind, as it's called. And a lot of this is borrowed from some of the Eastern traditional religions and from Buddhism, and you know, it all has a history to it. I'm not so familiar with that history because remember, I'm an atheist, and I don't know, religion just doesn't interest me that much. Maybe it will at some other point in my life, but it all comes from somewhere is what I'm getting at, and it's been incorporated into psychology because it works. It's been shown to work to do things like meditation. We've seen changes in brain activity. We see people's symptoms go down, so we know that it helps. So I think it's interesting to note that the two of them intersect, and there is some good positive things that come from psychology and spirituality coming together. I'll also mention more on the side of religion that, you know, a lot of people find relief in praying to whatever God that they worship, whether that be their vision of who God is, or if there's multiple gods. Like, I don't want to get into specifics here because everybody has a different feeling about who or what God is, but a lot of people find comfort through prayer, and they find that prayer helps them relieve their anxiety, helps them relieve some of their depression. It helps them feel like they're not alone because they are talking with God. God is, you know, very often an all-knowing person and a benevolent person, so it's very comforting, much like the way that you feel comforted by a parent when you're a child. It's comforting to pray to God, and I don't say that in any way to look down on somebody as if you're a child if you're praying to God. I just mean it's that same familiar, warm comfort that you're in somebody's hands. I think a lot of people get that feeling when they pray. So that can also provide psychological benefits, and it's a valid way to deal with symptoms that you are experiencing. It is not, however, a substitute for therapy, and that is something that I want to get into. So let's talk about that. Well, I was going to go to my spot that has the nice lighting, but I just felt like, you know, I don't have a lot of time tonight, and I didn't want to have to sit down like I did last night and then be chased away, so here I am. So remember that God that I was talking about? You may be familiar with him or her, or them, or however you believe. Usually God is viewed as omniscient, omnipotent, so all-powerful, all-knowing, and I know I reversed those. So they're a very attractive figure for a friend, for a loved one. What is crawling behind me? Ants are crawling behind me on the tree, so I'm not touching the tree, thankfully. So that's a very attractive figure, you know. Like I said, it's a very comforting figure. It feels warm, it feels wonderful, and we would like to align ourselves with that figure because it feels good to feel omnipotent and omniscient ourselves. I think the danger is when we start getting into spirituality and getting into religion and we start to feel that in some way we are God. And you know, I think I know there's a lot of I know from myself, just from dabbling in this stuff myself, there are people who believe, and I'm not saying this is wrong, that we have unlimited potential and we have we can do anything, and I don't think that's wrong. I think the danger is believing that we are never wrong and that we never have problems, and that we can somehow align ourselves with God, and then we don't have to worry about what's going on in our own minds because we're always going to be okay, we're always going to be perfect. And that what that does, unfortunately, is that prevents people from getting the treatment and the help that they need, because it's using God in a way to distract ourselves from the issues that we're having. Do you get what I'm saying here? You know, this is what happens very often when people get into cults. They get manipulated into belief systems that maybe they wouldn't have normally been manipulated into. I'm sorry, they wouldn't have normally taken up themselves. And that causes more psychological damage than it does help somebody. So I just wanted to point out that, you know, it goes both ways here. Sometimes spirituality and religion can be helpful, and sometimes they can be dangerous. So tonight is going to be a short video. I'm going to see if I have anything else to add to this as I walk, because as I mentioned, I'm a little time crunched, but we'll see. Okay, let's see how I do in this situation where I am right now. So I thought a little bit more, and I think I wanted to caution a little bit. I know there's a loud noise around here. I apologize. I can't really do anything about that. I realized that I wanted to talk a little bit more about that cult attitude that happens, and I think it's important when we practice spirituality or religion. You know, a lot of it has to do with specific thoughts, specific beliefs, and we want to be careful, number one, who's interpreting those beliefs, because if somebody else is interpreting them for you and you put all of your trust in that person may be manipulating you. They may encourage you to believe things that are not helpful or healthy for you. So that would be a case, especially if you have a mental disorder, you'd want to see a therapist and just double check to make sure that you don't have some kind of conflicting beliefs that may be harming you instead of helping you. I mean, I believe the purpose of spirituality and religion is to help you. So just something to be aware of, to be cautious over. What else? I think we should be cautious about feeling like we have to be identified by our religion or our spirituality, because when we feel like we're like locked in, like we need to fit in with those kinds of people, that could be acting narcissistically, and that can also put us in a dangerous position. I mentioned we should be cautious not to try to identify ourselves as godlike, or that we're somehow above other people, which would also be narcissistic. Anything else I want to caution against here? I don't know. You know, I'm not saying that spirituality is bad. I'm not saying religion is bad. As I mentioned, there are positive uses for both when it comes to mental health, but I do think it's very important for us to recognize that religion and spirituality are not a substitute for therapy and for psychoanalysis if that's needed, or medication if that's needed. It's not. We've had a history here in the United States anyway of sometimes believing that all we need to do is pray and things will get better, things will change, and you know, very, very often that's not the case. Like I said, you may feel some temporary relief doing those things, but if there's an underlying disorder that's causing whatever distress is happening in your life, then praying is not going to make it go away. So, no amount of books, no amount of spirituality. I see a lot of people get lost in the spiritual community, and what I see as an outsider, sometimes an insider, but mostly as an outsider, is I see a lot of people trying to solve psychological problems through spirituality, and it's funny, as an outsider it seems so obvious sometimes that I'm like, why can't you see this? Why don't you recognize that it's your thoughts that are causing the problems, but it's because people believe they're thinking happy spiritual thoughts, and that is the answer. But sometimes we cling so much to this belief that we have to behave and think these certain ways, and that will make us happy, and we have to believe in being happy, and that we will become happy. That's not always true. So I strongly want to caution against that. I don't know, I feel like there's more that I'd like to say, but I haven't thought this through. I apologize, as I mentioned, I'm rushed. But what do you think about all of this? Are you spiritual? Are you religious? What things have helped you in terms of spirituality and religion? And maybe if you're not spiritual, maybe you're not religious, why not? I don't know. Like, what do you think about this whole thing? Do you think that's, if you are spiritual and religious, do you think that you can use that in place of therapy? Are you aware of the differences? I don't know, because I feel like when I go out in social media, I see a lot of people who are not aware of the differences, and it frustrates me because I think, oh gosh, if these people just got into therapy, or if they started learning about their own mental health, like a lot of these things they seem to be having difficulty with could be cleared up a lot faster. Because I see people doing things for years, struggling with things, not really addressing the real problem. That's something that I want to get across, but I also don't want to make it seem like spirituality or religion are bad in some way. So what are your thoughts? Let me know. Hit subscribe if you're not already. If you'd like to see all of my videos here on mental health, then click the bell icon to get those notifications. Remember, YouTube has changed things around, so you may not see all of my videos unless you hit that bell. And if you'd like to support me, then you can do so over on Patreon and get some extra behind-the-scenes stuff. Click to get there, and thank you as always for being interested in your own mental health and for joining me.